You know, when I wrote the last video where I decided what the next topic would be, it was prior to AEW All In 2023, where some certain events with our main guy in this video took place. I did not plan on all this stuff happening, not just with him, but with wrestling altogether. I guess that's what I get for not uploading for a while. CM Punk is a man who certainly knows how to keep himself in the spotlight. People have certain opinions on him, some good and some bad. I definitely have an opinion on him, but I'm not going to talk about how I feel about him. Nobody cares about that. What I'm here to talk about is a pivotal moment in not just Punk's career, but wrestling as a whole, and if that moment didn't happen. I'm sure a lot of you know what moment I'm referring to, but for those who are newer fans of wrestling, or those that didn't read the title of this video, it's one of the big wrestling stories to come out of 2014. What if CM Punk never left WWE? Before I start, here's some delicious context for all you guys. Back in the good old days of 2013, wrestling was doing just fine. Not great, definitely seemed better. Not bad, but definitely seemed worse. But fine, it was okay. New Japan was slowly getting even more popular around the world. TNA's lifeless corpse somehow still had a heartbeat, and CM Punk was still rocking it in WWE. He had some killer matches during the year with guys like Rock, Taker, Lesnar, and of course, most importantly, Ryback. But during all of this, Punk was in a pretty bad way. There were a whole list of reasons as to why Punk left. One of the big reasons that people love to talk about the most is that he felt like he wasn't being booked properly. He just felt like they were putting a bunch of limitations on him that prevented him from reaching his full potential. They weren't treating him as big of a star as he thought he should be. Case in point, they had him lose to part-timers such as Rock, Taker, and Lesnar. He was wrestling almost every night, while wrestlers who showed up maybe a couple times a year would walk in and ruin his momentum. Punk was tired of working his ass off only to be pushed aside for the part-time legends. Another big one was not getting his WrestleMania main event. One of his goals in wrestling was to main event the biggest show of the year, and not achieving that goal due to being pushed aside for the part-timers was just adding fuel to the fire. Lastly, he was just mentally and physically burned out, especially towards the end of his run. He was dealing with injuries that he hadn't taken time off for to properly heal, as well as a big infectious lump on his back, which was misdiagnosed by WWE doctors and later found out to be a staph infection that nearly killed him. His spirit and his love for pro wrestling was being chipped away by the Fed, and he was just tired of it. So come January 2014, after the Royal Rumble, he told higher-ups exactly how he felt and walked out of the company the next night on Raw, never to return to the company that killed his love for pro wrestling and nearly killed him for real. Anyway, what if things turned out differently? What if WWE didn't try to kill Punk? What if CM Punk never left WWE? One thing WWE has to do to get Punk to stay is to properly treat his injuries. Now, I know that getting the Fed to take care of their employees is wishful thinking, but we have to be wishful with this scenario. Plus, this is definitely going to have to happen to get Punk to not be mentally and physically burnt out. Another thing that should happen is to get him his WrestleMania main event. With how the booking was at the time, Mania 29 was probably his best chance of doing it. He was the WWE champion for 400 plus days leading into 2013 and could have easily fit right into the main event that year. Hell, there were allegedly talks of doing Punk, Cena, and Rock in a triple threat match at that Mania, which, in my opinion, would have been better than running Once in a Lifetime from the previous year once again and basically making that a lie. Would doing this stuff definitely get him to stay? Probably. Can't say for sure because there were other reasons why he left. Stuff that's public knowledge and maybe even some stuff Punk hasn't talked about publicly. But these were some of the main causes, so dealing with these will probably get him to stay. So Punk gets his injuries properly cared for, and he gets his WrestleMania main event, and he's here to stay. Now what? Well, going into Mania 30, CM Punk was slated to face Triple H in his ongoing feud with the Authority. If he's been properly treated by medical professionals and already got his Mania main event, then I think this would still happen. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Josh, you sexy hunky man, what about Daniel Bryan and the Yes Movement? Would that still happen too? Well, my friends, the answer to that question is a very simple yes! The GOAT man was over like Rover going into 2014, and Punk staying honestly wouldn't change that. Just watch the 2014 Royal Rumble and you'll see what I mean. Following WrestleMania 30, I wouldn't be surprised if he continued to feud with the Authority, especially once Seth Rollins joined the group. I think those two would have some sort of feud going into 2014 or 2015. It wouldn't make sense if Punk is feuding with the Authority, plus him and Rollins would surely put on some epic matches during that time. That's really one of the only things of substance that I could see Punk doing following Mania 30. I mean, he could go after the world title again, but Brock would most likely still win the title at SummerSlam 2014 and hold on to it for a while. I don't see that changing. He could go after the US or Intercontinental titles and try to help them and elevate them maybe. Maybe he can feud with someone different or new like Cesaro. After winning the Andre Battle Royal at Mania that year, it would really benefit him to have a feud with Punk to try to elevate his stock in the company. There's also guys like Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, Bray Wyatt, Cody Rhodes, and more I just can't think of right now. It would be something new and different, plus it would be against guys that I'm sure Punk would have no problem doing business with. Other than that, I'm not really sure what else he could do that would help keep his stock high in the company. So, we've discussed how he'll stay and what he will be doing immediately after. Now, what does the later future hold for Mr. Chick Magnet Punk? Giving you all a heads up, just about everything following this will be me fantasy booking because there's not really any room in creative plans or anything like that for Punk during this time. I will try to keep everything grounded in reality to the best of my ability, but no promises. Going into Mania 31, there's only a couple things of substance CM Punk could do. He can have a feud with Seth Rollins going into the biggest show of the year. If they're feuding in 2014 to 2015, they can have like a big blow-off match at WrestleMania. That would be a good thing to see. Based on everything and who's available to work the show, Punk vs. Rollins is probably my favorite option. Besides that, he could have a match for the Intercontinental title, or a match with Daniel Bryan, Dean Ambrose, or Cesaro. Which any of them would still be cool options, but I would still personally prefer the match with Rollins. I still think the Reigns-Lesnar main event still happens with Seth Rollins cashing in during the match. Most of the rest of the card probably remains the same as well as the one on our timeline. For the rest of 2015, I would love to have him feud with guys like Neville, Kevin Owens, and eventually Roman Reigns. Punk would start a feud with KO after Mania and have it go through the summer, at least that's what I would do. Then I would have him turn heel, feud with guys like Neville, Dean Ambrose, Randy Orton, and so on to build him up to 2016, where I would have him take Triple H's place and win the 2016 Royal Rumble for the WWE title and have CM Punk carry it to WrestleMania 32 and drop it to Roman Reigns in the main event. Now admittedly, this will probably not do Roman any favors to help him get cheered, especially if he's booked exactly the same. But remember how Triple H vs. Roman went in our timeline? Even though Punk would most likely be cheered in this scenario, this would still be a much better match and main event than what we got. Heading into the brand split revival that year, honestly who knows what brand Punk would go to. He could go to either one, and I think it would only benefit him because he can establish himself as one of the top stars on either brand. Plus, with the influx of talent coming in, such as Sami Zayn, Finn Balor, and of course everybody's favorite Jinder Mahal, he would have no shortage of new and interesting feuds. Wouldn't be surprised if Punk even wins the world title a couple more times as the years go on. Could possibly even hit the double digits on world title reigns in WWE. But as we go into the 2020s, the career of CM, Philly Brooks, Punk will be pretty different compared to our timeline. Pretty much gone down a full-blown butterfly effect with this one. So it's gonna be pretty hard to accurately predict what Punk's future will be around this time, but I'm gonna give it my best shot. With the new decade starting, CM Punk would officially be with the company for 15 years. With all the years piling up on him, as well as the pandemic destroying the world, I think Punk would start to wrestle less and less, potentially even becoming the thing he hates, a part-time wrestler. In our timeline, he wrestled pretty much full-time in AEW when he returned in 2021. That's mainly because he was out of wrestling for 7 years and was making up for the lost time. Now that Punk has been wrestling in the Fed all this time, even with proper medical care, I think Punk would take the backseat going into the new decade, especially when the pandemic hits. Speaking of AEW, if Punk stays in the Fed, would the rival to the Big Dub still form? Yes, of course they would. Punk's staying doesn't change how popular the Elite get, and it doesn't really change most of the events that snowball into the company forming. Now, would Punk eventually jump ship to AEW? If he's being treated as a top star and he's being taken care of physically, mentally, and financially, then probably not. Punk would stay where he's at least for now, in my opinion. Cool Man Punk would probably take a Roman Reigns or Edge role going into the 2000s. Show up a few times, wrestles every so often throughout the year, here and there, something like that. With the extra free time, I could see Punk giving acting a bigger shot than in our timeline. He's had a couple decent roles here and there, but with the WWE machine behind him and a part-time schedule, I think he would give it a better chance in this timeline. I personally don't think Punk would give MMA a shot if he stays with the Fed. If he's wrestling full-time, then he won't even have the time to do it. Going into the 2020s, once he goes part-time, I seriously doubt he would do it then. But yeah, if he stays with the Fed this long, all the way into the 2020s, I think he'd take a step back. He didn't leave the Fed to become the hero, instead, he stayed long enough to become the villain. There were many reasons why Punky Boy left the Big Fed. Main ones being not being treated as a top star he felt he was, not getting his WrestleMania main event, and not being properly cared for by their medical team. If they address these issues, there's a very good chance that Punk would have stayed, in my opinion. Going into the mid to late 2010s, we would see him keeping that top guy spot for most of the decade, adding many more championships and accolades to his trophy case, plus entering high-profile matches and feuds with the stars of the next generation. His run into the new decade of the 2020s would see him starting to slow down and becoming the part-time wrestler he talks so much about. No MMA run for him. AEW would still form, but he probably wouldn't jump ship over there. We all have our own opinions of the man. I certainly have some opinions on him, but we can't deny that he's one of the most controversial wrestlers of the modern era. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I apologize for being away for so long. Some personal stuff was keeping me pretty occupied through the end of 2023. Now I'm happy to say that I'm back and ready to make more videos. At the time this video drops, I should already be starting on the next topic, so it should drop in the next couple of weeks, if not sooner. I won't reveal the topic just yet, you'll have to keep an eye out for it. Thank you all again for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. Also, This Fire Burns was Punk's best theme song. Fight me.